Welcome to BookHuddle. I'm your host, Karen Reader with Readgab. Today, our guest is Lauren Wolk. I finished reading her book just a few days ago, and immediately, I seriously finished it and then came right down here and emailed her. And I was like, I would just love to have you on because it was beautiful. It was brilliant. I just felt so many emotions, and the writing is exquisite. I am so glad to have her here today. Lauren, can you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself besides being an author?
Sure, and thank you very much for those kind words, Karen. I appreciate it. A little bit about myself as an author. Well, I'm a lot of things. I am primarily a writer. I'm also a poet. Poet is a writer. I write novels, I write poems. I've recently become a filmmaker
Neat.
with an artist friend of mine. She provides the animations and I provide the words, and we find music. I'm a visual artist. I make mixed media and assemblage pieces in my workshop and show them in galleries and stuff. It's I have a very layered creative life and a wonderful family, and I live in a beautiful place, so I am many times over blessed.
Wonderful, wonderful. And it looked like on your site you move around a lot too. You used to, right? You've lived in a
I
lot of
used
different
to,
places.
yeah, not as much as an army brat or somebody, who really makes the
Right.
rounds, but I lived in a bunch of places growing up, and I think that was probably good for me because I tend to get it very attached to things, and that forced me to start again and again and again, and it taught me how to make new friends and adapt.
Well, it probably helped you a lot in the process of you becoming a creator, right? Because that's a lot of what I want to talk about today is artists and songwriters and singers and writers, they developing and becoming themselves. Do you think that
Mhm.
influenced you a lot, is the different places that you went?
Yeah, moving around really pushed me to rely on myself and what I had inside myself, the things I learned about myself, most of them very creative, which brought me a lot of fulfillment. So, although I'm a bit of a loner, I was never lonely, and I made lots of friends wherever I went anyway, but I was always my own anchor.
Excellent. That is so neat. All right, so I love to do an author icebreaker based on a children's book. So we've got Charlotte's Web, and I think this is a
Mhm.
very well-known story. So we'll just jump right into it. If you could pick one of the barnyard animals for a friend, which animal would it be and why?
Well, Charlotte, of course.
Right.
She's a writer and
Oh,
she's
yes.
I love spiders. I always capture them and take them outside, although in the winter I let them stay. There's a really big one living in my linen closet. It's not quite warm enough to take her outside. But I think they're wonderful creatures and she's terrific. She's brilliant and she also looked after she looked after Wilbur, of course.
Right.
She was kind and generous and very smart. So yeah, I'd hang around with Charlotte any day.
I love that you love spiders and that it's just like, oh, there's my spider friend right there. Not time to go
Yeah.
out yet, like as you
No.
pass
No,
by
I
her.
mean the really big kind of hairy jumping ones that bite. I'm not so wild about them, but I never
Yeah,
kill them. I
we're
just
not
take them
gonna
outside.
be
Yeah.
friends, right? Yeah. That's so cool. All right, Lauren, will you give us just a brief summary of what your book is about for those who have not heard of Candle Island?
Sure. I just got a box of them the other day, so hold
So
one up.
beautiful.
Candle Island is, well, it's about a lot of things. And I always have a hard time talking about my own books because they're about so many things to me. But in this case, it's about a girl named Lucretia who, with her mother, moves to a tiny island off the coast of Maine. They're leaving behind a life of grief and sadness, and they're taking with them to the island a big secret. And when they get there, they encounter a lot of people who have a very immediate and profound impact on their lives, including two other kids who Lucretia can tell have the potential to be kindred spirits, and three kids who are sort of like mirror images of these three who are not pleasant people.
Right.
And she's caught betwixt and between. I live in a place where in the winter the population is a fraction of what it is in the summertime, and there's always a challenge in the summer to manage that population as it grows, and the feelings of we sometimes feel like we're serving the summer people who come here, the tourists, and at
Right.
least how they see us. So Lucretia experiences some of that sort of social chaos that goes on the island, and she's neither an islander nor someone from away. as
Right.
Mainers like to say. So there's a lot going on in this book, but it's all held together by her creativity.
Yes.
She likes to paint and the creativity of other people on the island.
I love this theme of creativity and that there's so many different types. And so I like using the word creator because we've got artist and singer and poet. So we've got so many types. So just throughout the interview, we're just going to say creator.
Yep, I love that.
So what do you feel that art means to the creator as they're creating it? What personally for you as the creator, as an author, or whatever you've done? What do you think it means to you?
That's a really big question and it's got a big answer. I'll try and make it small.
You're good.
From the time I was a little girl, when I made something, whether it was arts and crafts or especially writing once I knew how, or telling a story before I knew how to write, I always felt like I understood who I was. Like I understood what I was doing here. It made me feel whole, and I happened to have a family that was very supportive and teachers who really encouraged me. And so whenever I did the thing I loved best and I got encouragement to do it more, of course, I did do it more for both reasons, and that made me more accomplished. And I ended up, it was a lovely kind of a spiral upward. And so when I create, what does it do for me? It makes it fills me up. It absolutely fills me up, even though I am taking things out of myself in order to create. I'm also replenishing them twofold, tenfold, a millionfold as I do. It's a really incredible process to create art, music, any kind of art, as you say. To create is an incredible, highly personal process that is unlike anything else I've ever known, except for perhaps giving birth. There's there, which is an act of creation as
That's what
well.
I was going to say. Creating art.
Yeah, the ultimate, really. So yeah, it's at the center of everything I do and everything I am.
What would you say to somebody who they want to be some type of creator, whether adult or child? What if they feel scared that they don't know if they're brave enough to start?
It's interesting that you ask it that way because I've never really found it to be scary. The act of creation, the act of sharing the art can be scary.
Okay. Yes.
We'll get to that. But the act of making art or creating anything, it could be a cake, it could be any kind of invention,
Yes.
it could be anything that you make that would not exist otherwise. It is
Right.
yours. You have made it. That I wouldn't say is scary, but it can be exhilarating and it can be a little intimidating if you don't know how to take what's in your head and your heart and create them.
I
So
like that. Intimidating.
yeah, it's intimidating, but it's also exciting. So sometimes you need to take a class to learn how to do something highly technical. Sometimes you just need to practice. Well, you always
Yes.
need to practice over and over and over again. Sometimes you need to share the work with people you trust and get feedback. It's always a good
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
But but essentially that act of creating, of getting your hands into the thing, metaphorically or literally, it should not be scary. And if it is, you got to think about why. Why is this scary to me? If it's because you're afraid of failure, boy, you better get over that because failure is the best form of education. And, if it's a terrifying thing, if it's a dangerous thing, you don't want to make a mistake. So maybe don't start with welding. Maybe you start with
Right.
something else.
Right.
But to be afraid of the process is probably going to doom it. So
Yeah.
I would say just find the courage to create and see what happens. And don't have preconceived notions. Just go
Oh, I
into
like
it
that. No preconceived notions.
with no expectations, with except every expectation that you're going to fail. And
Right.
then when you do, you'll be able to get something out of it.
There you go. Oh, I like that. I like that. And let's just start. Just start. Make something.
Begin.
You're going to start by a class or start by yourself. The best point to start at is the beginning and get
Right
started,
now.
right? We mentioned what about when you're scared to share it with somebody? Do you feel there is a need to share the creations or what do you feel? Should
Well, that's up to every individual artist. I feel the need to share because it's the way I communicate best.
me
And when I've made something that I love, I want to share it with others. Well,
too.
whether it's a pizza or a book or a song or a piece of art, any other kind of piece of art. So the rub is that if you have really put your heart and soul and mind and spirit and everything you've got to give the piece, whatever it is, if you've put all that into it, then quite naturally you may be a little bit afraid to share it with the world because the world is not always kind. It rarely is kind. And you have to be prepared for some people to stomp on your heart, for them to make fun of you, or to just simply misunderstand you, or just not to like what you've created, because art is subjective. We don't all like the same things, the same books, the same music, the same anything.
It'd be
It's
terrible if we
supposed to
did.
be that way.
You're
No.
right.
It would be a very boring world if we all created the same things and liked the same things. So you got to understand that going in. And then you got to just be tough about it. And yes, your feelings are going to get hurt, but there are other times when you're going to soar on how good you feel when you touch another human being, when your work evokes an emotional response, a good, positive emotional response in somebody else. There's nothing like it.
So we
So,
talked about what it means for the person making the art. What does it mean for the recipient, do you feel, when somebody takes that art, that whether they're just consuming it somehow or they've purchased it or viewing it? Let's talk about the recipient now.
well, hopefully, if the creator has put all of her emotions and senses and everything else into a piece, the recipient is going to get that. It may not be identical,
No.
but the senses, the emotions, all those things are bridges between writers and readers or painters in the audience or whatever the art form is. And so you invest enough, your people are probably going to reap that from your work. I know as someone who is around art all the time in all its forms, much of it live, I know that I always leave that experience changed, and more powerful. It's an education. Being around artwork, even if you don't love it, is always interesting, always educational, always inspiring. And I can't recommend it highly enough. And I wish more kids were out in museums and galleries and in concert halls and doing all the things that will give them that experience.
Because as you consume art, you're more likely to be inspired to create, right? Maybe
Quite
not the
so,
exact same
yes.
kind. Has there ever been a time for you, Lauren, where you created something, maybe one of your books or something else, and you had a certain emotion that you were going for or a certain theme? Were you surprised when somebody took away something else? And could you share about
Absolutely.
different reaction than you expected?
Trying to think of an example. It's been a while since anyone confessed to or
Right.
admitted to having a reaction that was entirely unexpected. But I love that. I
Right?
absolutely love it. So I will say that I got a letter from a young reader the other day who said she loved Wolf Hollow, but she did not like the ending. And I won't reveal what that is for
Mm.
listeners who have not read Wolf Hollow. I'm sure there are many, but it has actually that and Beyond the Bright Sea, my second book, have endings that some readers regretted. They were like, oh, I wish this had happened or I wish that had happened. And
Right.
why didn't it? They want to they want an
I want you to
explanation.
explain this.
Yeah, exactly. And I always do. I always just say it. I had to do what felt right to me and what felt right for the piece. Lots of times I leave things untidy.
Uh-huh.
I don't like to tie off all the loose ends, and people like you to tie off all the loose ends. They
Yes,
really do.
they do.
So you just have to be true to yourself, and you can't please all the people all the time. So
Right. Do you feel that anyone could be a creator? Can anyone decide, I want to create something? Is the potential
100% yes. And I believe that the most creative people on earth are little children
nice?
because they're not scared yet. They haven't been taught that they can fail, that there's a right way or a wrong way to make a piece of art. Their imaginations are all fired up. They're fearless. They love color. They love to just create
Yeah.
spontaneously, which is an amazing thing. And
Mm.
then, unfortunately, I say we drive it out of them. The world drives that spontaneity out of them and tells them they're doing it wrong. And then they hesitate and they doubt themselves and they turn off the tap and they walk away from it. Lots of times people come back around in retirement, even. They say, I'm going to take an art class. And they discover that they have not necessarily a talent. I don't even know what that means, but they have a love for something. They find joy in it. And by some definition, they're good at it. And it's just a real shame that between the ages of 5 and 65, there's this long dry spell for too many
Oh,
people who
right,
just decide they're not good enough. So
right,
they don't do it. And if you don't do it, you don't get good enough by whatever that means. I I wish we would never grade artwork,
right,
never grade music, never grade creative writing,
right.
never grade any of the creative arts, and there are many of them. Just let people do their thing.
Yes,
Let them do it every day, and they'll want to do it every day because they love it, because no
yes,
one has smacked them around for it. And
right,
if they do it every day, they not only will love it more and more, they'll get better and better at it, more and more accomplished, and push through to the point where someone can criticize them and it won't matter. It might sting a little, but it won't turn
right.
off the
It
tap.
won't stop them from creating because
Right.
that's the last thing we.
Everybody has the potential to create. Some will not achieve the levels of success that
Right,
others will, but that
right.
should not be the arbiter whether or not you create.
Yes, because that was going to be one of my questions. Do you feel that somebody should create for the potential of monetary gain or something?
Well, a lot of people
PR
do.
goal.
There are a lot of people out there who make art specifically tailored for the buying public.
Right.
And I get that. They want to make a living. That's,
Yes.
okay. But if you really want to make art that pleases you, that fulfills you, that is what you were meant to do, the thing that rises in you when you sit before a canvas or a notebook or whatever, then you got to turn off that part of the whole thing. You've really got to cut out the monkey mind. Don't worry about the money
Right.
or the fame. Because if you create something truly amazing, chances are you will make a living out of it. And
Yes.
if you don't, you will have made a life out of it.
Oh, I love
So,
that.
yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with people admitting that they're trying to make a living from their art. I get that. I really do. It's
Absolutely.
important that we all, have a roof over our heads, but I don't think that should be the primary reason you make
Right.
art ever.
Right. Can be a win-win, but
Yeah,
what, you know, for the start of it, do it for the love. Because if you want to make money doing something you love, then don't lose that love for what you're
right.
creating.
Be
Because it's
true to yourself. If you're
right.
making something that you think the great, you know, American buying machine will love, it's probably going to be a tchotchke. So you might lose yourself along the way.
Right. So when you were creating this book, Candle Island, did you have this goal in mind? Because you've already, in an email, you said you're kind of like a pantser, right? They
Yeah.
call authors that there's not an outline going on. You're just going for it, discovering where it goes.
Yep.
But as you started going, was it, I'm going to work on this person being an artist? What things did you have in mind, and what can you share that evolved there?
Well, I always start with a sense of with a place that is a character, and then I put a human, in this case Lucretia, into the scene, and I watch her and I follow her, and we do stuff. We have an adventure.
Right.
But you're right that as I get to know her, and I get to know my characters the way we get to know people in life. You don't get to know them all at once. You get to know them a little at a time by watching them, talking to them, doing things with them. Same with a character. As that happened with Lucretia and I discovered things about her, I had aha moments and I developed those things that I really loved. And when she developed relationships with others and I saw where those were going, I allowed those characters to, become fully formed. And so it's a very organic process. Like you say, I'm a pantser. I don't want to know what happens on the next page, the next
Right.
paragraph. I just want it to unravel because then I get to be both reader and writer at the same time. I get to really enjoy the adventure and feel all the emotions and just be in the scene with my protagonist, which is also why I write in the first person. I am
Right.
absolutely connected to my protagonist. It's a very intimate relationship and it's a joyful thing.
That is neat. That is neat. I love one of my favorite things about it that I've just taken to use with preschoolers. When she talks about she's told the sky can't be green, and that's something about a cow too, right? She uses that line multiple times. What is wrong with the cow? Was there about
Yeah,
a cow?
she does not create creatures the way her teachers or anyone else
Yes,
expects
there's
her
just
to.
she just doesn't meet the mold, especially as a child. This should look like this. There should be stick figures that represent the people and the family or whatever. And I'm always when because I do teach preschool right now, and when we're going about doing an art project, I that's what I repeat the most is I'm like, I love how these look so different, and I love that you each are doing your own thing, and I'll point out different things. And yeah, if you want to use that color, go ahead.
Good for you.
There shouldn't be something that stops
Yeah.
somebody in their
As soon
creativity,
as you tell them they're doing it wrong, something dies,
right?
especially with the little ones who may not understand why anything has to be the same as what's on the paper next to them on either side.
Right,
Why would we want to all create the cookie cutter
right,
image? Why wouldn't we want a purple cow? I've never understood that. And if you look at the great artists of the world, you really look at the paint. I'm looking at a painting right now. The sky is green. I've never seen a green sky, but that is a beautiful green sky, and I wouldn't have it any other way. That
right.
is unlike anything else that I've ever seen before. That's what I'm after.
That is neat.
Yeah.
I love that so much. Okay, do you know what I want to talk about? In the book, there's this bird pretty early on.
Yeah.
So as the bird came along, because being a pantser, you maybe aren't so much that it's like this represents this, but we get themes
Never.
later. Do you feel like the bird represents anything as you looked back at it?
Yeah, usually around halfway through a book, I have an aha moment where like, oh, that's what this book is about, or
Right,
that's why she's doing this, or that's what this means. And of course, who really knows? But in
right.
this case, she finds this baby bird, an osprey. And I think interactions with animals in this book, as in many books
Yes.
that I've read or written, animals are a wonderful way to know what a person's really like. The
Yeah.
way they treat animals, the way they interact with animals. If they're kind to animals, that says one thing. If they're not, that says something very different. And I don't just use them, they all have their own personalities, but in
Oh,
the
well, this bird
relationships,
has so much personality.
he's a real pistol. And the way she interacts with him says so much about her and her loneliness and her desire for connection. But yeah, when I was writing as she was walking down this path to this cove, I did not know she was going to find a bird until she did. And
Right.
then it was like, oh, what's going to happen with this bird? And I got to keep writing until I found out.
And it's become such a great just supporting thing that supports the plot and the characters and their interactions with each other. I love this bird. So I just
Yeah, and there's a horse and there's a goat and there's
yes.
a dog and there are singing seals and I don't have any pets because my husband's allergic to
Oh no.
virtually everything. But I love animals and so just like I don't have any daughters, I get to have daughters through my books. I
Yeah.
also get to have pets or animal companions through my books, so I love doing that.
Oh, that is so fun.
Yeah.
So one of the themes also that I love is the becoming new. She just is constantly, and I think the art helps her with this, right? That she's constantly like, who am I becoming on this island? Because you said, for one, there's this big class distinction. And I even think that the ones who reside there constantly feel like the people who come for the summer are using them. But I bet those summer people also almost feel like, well, I'm supporting your island, even though I'm only here
Oh,
with,
of course. Of
right?
course.
And so they
That's the problem
this
right there.
big and there's oh my gosh, there's so much misunderstanding and there's some meanness and but she's trying to figure out her place amongst all this because it's not small. There is some,
There's a lot of
40%.
tension. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tension there. But she's trying to figure out who she belongs to here and who is she becoming.
Yeah.
And so how can art or whatever creation help somebody discover who they are?
Well, the artists I know a lot of them, and I myself, as an artist of various things, we tend to be very observant, very, very highly perceptive people who notice everything going on in the world around them. And if an artist is willing to take risks and invest him or herself in the work, then she or he is also an honest person, at least in that context. So you've got people who are really observant about the world, about others in it, and who are really honest about who they are. And you put those two things together and you end up with a kid, Lucretia, who is constantly evolving because she's so aware of everything around her and because she's so aware of everything inside her. And because she's doing things with both of those kinds of perception, the external and the internal, she's putting them into her art and into her relationships. And so every day for her, when she gets out of bed, it's like a canvas, and she herself is going to be the paint upon the canvas. And I find that to be incredibly exciting. And I love the fact that I'm an artist because there is the potential for me every day to learn something new about myself, about the world, and to put that understanding into a piece of art. It's incredibly fulfilling, and I wish more people would develop those sensitivities
Yeah.
instead of shutting them down. It can be a little bit scary. You're so hypersensitive to the world that everything can hurt. You
Right.
know, the
Right.
news, the whatever's going on in the world has the potential to, it's like a thousand
Yeah.
stabs.
Yeah.
But at least you're feeling things. At least your senses are wide awake. And I'd rather have that any day of the week than to be numb.
Yeah.
I'm never
Yeah.
numb.
Ooh, yes, I love that. It's better to feel emotion than not to feel at all.
Yeah.
And I love that you point out that she's aware of this. She's aware that this is changing her, that she is evolving, because so often people don't realize changes that they're going through. And I like with my husband, as we've talked about how we've moved around the country quite a bit and how different people we've met and different things we've changed. In some ways, we've changed similarly, parallel to each other, and other ways we haven't. But
Mhm.
it's been neat to watch and reflect on and see that good and maybe not. And especially since you write for youth, I like that the people who interact with her are going to affect things. And she does say now it's their turn to decide what happens next. You know, she does recognize that other people's choices are going to affect this,
Mhm.
but she's going to choose who to hang out with. And her choices in interacting with people, she knows they're going to affect her. And so I love that even there's this grumpy and she's like am I gonna try this, and even her mom's like maybe you shouldn't. She's trying to decide who to interact with and what's really worth it, and I think
Mhm.
that's so powerful to
That's
hear.
true. She's trying to see past what's visible in these people because she knows that everybody has a shell, everybody has a second skin, everybody is, or maybe not everybody, but a lot of us are private, careful about what we show other people when we first meet them.
Definitely
So you got
multiple
to be
layers.
patient. Yeah, you have to be patient. You have to be kind. You have to give people a chance to show who they really are, give them lots of openings. And yeah, some of them are really grumpy people. That doesn't mean they're bad people.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
She has to decide which of these grumps do I want to waste my time with? You know,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
multiple grumps, and she does interact with both sides, you know. She sees both the islander side and the vacationer side, and she's choosing who to continually interact with on both sides. And
Yes, that's
yes,
true. She judges people, if she judges them at all, by what they do.
right.
And that's where the animals come back in. You know, when someone is very kind to animals and is creative and is carrying around some sorrow, then they deserve a lot of time and patience to reveal the soft underbelly, the true person inside, to let them come out of the shell. I think that's my best friends in the world were people I didn't necessarily like at first
Initially.
because I didn't know them yet.
Right. Right. So many beautiful things for us all to see, regardless of ages.
Right.
Things a chance. All right. Well, Lauren, I love to ask everybody what is a
Mhm.
favorite book that you can recommend for the listeners?
Oh, yeah, that's so hard. But there is one book among many, many, many books that I've read in my life that stands out because I think it might have been the very first time when I realized the power of words, and that's Goodnight Moon.
Oh,
Just love that book, always will. I have a copy of it right over here. I just bought for a friend who became a grandmother the other day. It it so draws you into the great green room and you hear the sounds, you feel the feelings, all your senses are alive. And that to me is what great literature does. It pulls you into the scene, brings you into the story. You lose your sense of separateness from the work. You are one with it. And Goodnight Moon is a great example of that.
You know, that makes me so happy that you picked Goodnight Moon just because it's so simple. So many listeners are probably familiar with it. I could recite the whole thing to you
Yeah,
right
sure.
now without the pictures, it just but the way it flows. But often people think that simple doesn't have anything else to it because it's just simple. I could have done that as simple, but
Yeah,
you
I challenge people to try.
right,
Simplicity is very, very hard to achieve, the right kind of simplicity.
right?
And in this case, and it happens to be married with wonderful illustrations by Clement Hurd. I mean, they're just
Yes,
gorgeous and it's a really good fit. But when you're lying in your mom's lap and she's reading, or your dad is reading that to you, and in a hushed voice,
yes.
it's bedtime. I mean, I remember how it felt to be 3 or 4 years old and having my mom or dad read that book to me. They created a world. That book created a world, and I like to go back to that world. It's to retreat to that place because the rest of the world is not nearly as nice. So
I feel
simplicity
like
is a great thing.
I feel like Goodnight Moon taught me that calm voice that because I love to read to kids, and you can read to many different ages, the loud books, the book with no picture, Gerald and Piggy, these really loud animated books that I can go all around the room and throw my arms up and people will listen to me. But I feel like Goodnight Moon taught me that I can engage in a quiet way and not just at bedtime, but my quiet voice can be
Anytime.
captivating too. Like,
Yeah.
for example, today I get to the preschool and I had to not be there. And the book that was out as I'm rushing in, I was like, okay, I haven't read this before, but it was an Easter book about an Easter egg and this bunny. And I was like, oh, lame, like initially. And so I pulled out my quiet, calm voice. And I feel like a really Goodnight Mean taught me that is how to use a calm voice to engage.
Sure, it's a whisper book. There are
Right.
lots of, I love all different kinds of books with
Yes.
all different kinds of voices, but whisper books and the books I read as an adult, I love the onion books, the ones that make me cry.
Yes.
Um, but there's room on the table for every kind
The
of good book,
calm.
and but Good Night Moon, yeah, will continue to be one of, if not my all-time favorite.
Beautiful. Oh, I just love it. I love the calm that it brings. I feel like, because about yearbooks, I felt like reading Candle Island, I feel like there's just so much to it. And the writing is just beautiful. The way you
Thank
use
you.
words and then the imagery is just amazing. And
Thank you.
then, there's so many different layers of themes. And I love to hear you say that you get something so beautiful out of another piece of literature. It's
Oh,
just
all the time. I don't know what I'd do without books. I
right.
just don't know what I'd do. I don't think I could live without them and other forms of art. And you're right about calling people creators. The European word artist means every kind, from writer to painter to musician. But in America, we tend to say artist as painter.
Right?
When I say artist, I mean all of them, including writers and children are born natural born artists. So
Yes.
they know a good piece of art, a good book when they find one. They're all in, which is the way you want to be with art.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Lauren.
Thank
And
you.
this book, it is either out already when this episode is out, or it's coming out in days because
April
it is
22nd.
upon us.
Yep. Yep. But I thank you, Karen. This was a lot of fun and I appreciate the support.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I hope that you enjoyed hearing about Candle Island by Lauren Wolk. If you enjoy my podcast, BookHuddle, I would love for you to take a minute and rate and review it on your podcast platform. This will help more people find BookHuddle. Now go and have a fantastic week reading some amazing books.